Today, we will hear from a white woman who asked black women why black women don't like white women. Take a listen.
Dear black women, so I did a video yesterday addressing specifically black women. So as a woman, we have blazed these trails together. We did this together. We need to stand together. Women, to include black women, got the right to vote after men. They're still leading the race. It's still not equal. Equality, equal pay. We still get less on the dollar. So why are you alienating a high percentage of allies? Like, why are you doing this? Separation will lead nowhere, and in the real world, aside from TikTok, we have to bargain together. We have to do this together. Why are you alienating? And what constitutes white? Most of us are blended. My family is blended. You know, I have cousins that are married to beautiful black women or even black men. So there's a lot of mixed in my family. So if it's just a black pack, like where do you draw the line? Only certain black people? Because I have 2% Nigerian. Am I allowed in? I think we all should be allowed in because we're women and this is our battle together. I don't know if you noticed, but the world is still being run by men. Men that love war and that love keeping us divided. So why would you want to divide yourselves? Women had nothing to do with slavery, literally, like nothing. I'm sure we were saying, hey babe, this is pretty effed up because we're nurturing, we're loving, it's wrong. That was men. So why this hate on white women? What has a white woman? Because we're somewhat married to white men? My husband's not a racist or we're Gen X. Like, we grew up together. I went to school. I learned so much from the black culture because of desegregation, and I loved it. Rockin' a robin all day long, puffin' a puffin', and we're doing the double dutch. Like, I loved it, and we were friends. So I don't know what happened and why there's this divide, and especially when we all need each other. Can someone let me know what's going on and what changed to all the hate on white women? Because I would certainly like to know what happened. Because I don't feel like we all have friends that are diverse. So do you think there's some little pocket of, you know, a place where we're not all interacting, engaging? In the neighborhood, it's diverse. So what happened to where there's black pack hate against white women? I don't know what happened. Why are you guys mad at white women? Seriously, I just want to know. I mean, my friends didn't get the memo. You know, I have a beautiful friend that has a doctorate. It's tons. I have every ethnicity of friends. I don't know if they get the memo because we still love each other. So I don't know. Are these educated? Black pack? Like what? I don't know. Someone let me know. Okay, thanks. Bye.
This woman is clueless. She really needs to study true history. The so-called alliances that black women tried to form with white women have constantly been betrayed. because movements for liberation have been diluted by white women seeking to maintain the very hierarchies they claim to dismantle. The women's suffrage movement and the Black Lives Matter movement both stand as stark examples of how white women have historically co-opted Black-led struggles, using them for their own gain while ensuring the preservation of white supremacy. After the Civil War, the push for voting rights fractured along racial lines. White suffragists, including Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, were outraged that Black men were being granted the right to vote before white women. In 1865, Stanton denounced that Black people who was recently freed from slavery should not be able to vote before white women. Such sentiments reveal the deep-seated racism that plagued the early suffrage movement, where white women were not fighting for equality, but rather for their place within the racial hierarchy of power. The hostility toward Black women persisted into the 20th century. In 1913, the organizers of the Women's Suffrage Parade in Washington, D.C., forced Black women to march at the back, separate from white participants. Although Black women such as Ida B. Wells resisted this segregation, their struggles were ignored by the mainstream suffragist movement, which prioritized white women's access to power over true justice. Even after the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920, granting women the right to vote, the fight was not over for Black women. State laws and Jim Crow restrictions continued to disenfranchise Black voters. It wasn't until the Voting Rights Act of 1965, fought for by Black civil rights leaders and Black women activists, that their voting rights were truly secured. To understand why white women have consistently chosen racial privilege over true equity, one must examine the historical roots of race and whiteness. Whiteness is not merely a skin color, but a constructed social category designed to maintain a racial hierarchy that privileges those who belong to it. In the United States, whiteness has always been tied to power, economic control, and social dominance. White women have played an integral role in this structure, often benefiting from and upholding white supremacy while presenting themselves as victims of patriarchal oppression. This contradiction is seen throughout history, particularly in their participation in the institution of slavery. White women and the slave economy is another example on how they benefited. White women were not passive bystanders in the system of slavery. They were active participants. Many white women owned slaves, ran plantations, and profited from Black labor. Scholars such as Stephanie Jones Rogers in They Were Her Property have documented how white women were not only complicit in slavery, but were also key enforcers of its brutality. This legacy of racial domination continued beyond slavery, as white women used segregationist policies and racial violence to uphold their social status. Even when white women fought for legal rights, these rights were still tied to the preservation of white supremacy. The Mississippi Married Women's Property Law of 1839 is an example. While it allowed married women to retain property rights independent of their husbands, it did nothing to challenge the exploitation of Black people. Instead, it solidified white women's economic power, often through ownership of enslaved people or land acquired through slavery's profits. Today, white women continue to vote against their own best interests in favor of maintaining racial hierarchy. In 2016, and again in 2020, over 50% of white women voted for Donald Trump. Even as Black people have exposed systemic racism in policing and society, white women largely align themselves with conservative policies that uphold white dominance. This pattern of betrayal is not new. Throughout history, white women have used racial privilege to gain advantages while abandoning their so-called allies when Black liberation threatened their own position within the racial caste system. The question we must ask is, when will white women prioritize justice over racial loyalty? And for Black communities, the answer remains clear. True liberation will never come from relying on those who benefit from our oppression. Tell me what you think about this topic. Hope you find the information in this video informative. Feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment. Thanks for watching.